Everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to those joining on live stream
Just ignore it.
and to all in the room on Zoom. Still got one or two more people joining us.
Hello.
Hello.
Staying home, keeping our distance.
That's normal, yeah.
So just a reminder to put yourselves on mute when you're not speaking, so that we can hear Adrian clearly as the evening goes on. And do use the raise hand or just chip in if you need to.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to concentrate on the Bible thing at the same time.
Welcome to MasterChef.
Okay, speak to you later.
We're about to find out just
Thanks, John. Well, welcome everyone. It's really good to be here. Good to be able to share the evening again and to continue or complete. I almost want to say, I don't quite want to say that, but almost want to say complete our journey with Mark's Gospel. I'm just going to share screen. And there's just a reminder about the coffee group tomorrow. This is the journey that we've been on, a journey of trying to be faithful to God and following Jesus. And the reminder throughout the story has been that discipleship is the only form of faith in Jesus Christ. This is your story. This has been your story. This continues to be your story. This is the story of your discipleship. We've been through this. What are the keys to interpreting any piece of text? Just call them out. You have to unmute, of course.
Context, genre.
Context and genre. There we go. Context determines the meaning, determines the way we can understand it. Genre determines what is our appropriate response to it. Genre is the type of writing, and gospel is a particular genre of writing. It's not biography, but it contains biography. It's not history, but it contains history. It's a type of writing that was written to make a particular point. Started by the Roman Empire as their form of propaganda, but Mark kind of took it over and said, let me use this style of communication to tell you about Jesus Christ, to explain to you who he is and what it's going to mean if you want to follow him. As such, he made sure that everything we need to know is included in the story. I'll say it again, it's important tonight to note this. Everything we need to know is included in the story. There's nothing superfluous. All the detail is important to what we have. Yeah? Mark wasn't just a single voice in the New Testament, but he was the first voice. And the key thing to be asking always with gospel writing is not the science question, how does this work? Not the history question, what would it look like if I'd been there? But the gospel question, what does this mean? What does it teach me about God? What does it teach me about being a disciple? What does it teach me about people? What does it teach me about the world? All of this happened in the Near Middle East. We know that, eh? Honor and shame are two important categories. We've been through that before. I've told you all this stuff before. But I don't know if I told you that there was going to be a test. So John's going to just magic everyone into small groups now. And in your small groups, I want you to talk about what does Jesus do, okay? What are the type of things that we see Jesus doing over and over again in Mark's gospel? What is it that Jesus is doing? Now, remember, we're talking about gospel. Gospel as a genre. This is gospel as a genre. So in your small groups, have that discussion, and then we'll get back together and we can make a to-do list. We can fill Jesus' to-do list with the kind of things that Jesus does. Is that okay?
4 minutes time, folks. 3 minutes of regular time, 1 minute of bonus warning time. I think it will do it all for you. And we'll see you in a bit. Peter, are you winning? What group have you been assigned to?
Peter's just arrived, but you can put him into 13.
All right. Great.
Peter, you're gonna have a quick discussion about what are the type of things you see Jesus doing in Mark's gospel.
Go. That leaves us just for a few minutes to talk about.
What are the type of things that we see Jesus doing in Mark's gospel?
We see Jesus doing. We see him healing a lot. We see him casting out demons.
Yeah.
We see him moving quickly.
Yes.
Immediately.
Immediately that. Yes, quite right. Yes. Welcome back, Trisha.
Trisha, you've been in the sessions. What do you see? What do you see Jesus doing?
Challenging.
Are you going to put Margaret somewhere?
Michelle?
Challenging, yeah.
Challenging authority, challenging the preconceptions, challenging the way things are done around here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to look through my copy of the text.
Yes.
I'm not screen
No,
sharing.
I mean, we love to see
No.
Jesus healing and teaching.
Yeah. Actually, Jesus, I mean, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus really presented explicitly as this great teacher. I mean, there's 5 chapters of the Sermon on the Mount and that sort of thing.
Mm.
But Mark is very clear about Jesus being a teacher as well. And this, but so often he wraps the story together, and you have a little bit of a story from Jesus, and then you'll have the real live action that illustrates the story, or sometimes the other way around. First, an incident, if you like, and then a teaching that relates to it. Yeah.
Have you?
I love that we see Jesus going to places that perhaps Jews wouldn't have gone to. So going to the other side of the lake and repeating his the habits that we've seen in Jewish territory, in the Gentile territory.
Yes. Yeah. Very inclusive. In our language. Yeah. Sorry, John, you were going to say something else?
I was wondering about whether you spent much time exploring Mark and sandwiches and all that sort of stuff.
We touched on it. We didn't really. I mean, it came up with a few of the obvious sandwiches that we dealt with it like that, and said, no, this is not 2 stories. This is 1 story. I mean, I wonder how many times I say this is one of my favorite stories as we go through Mark's gospel. but the story of the woman and the young girl, and the woman who is nameless but ends up being a child of Abraham, who's bleeding, and the little girl who's dead and raised back to life. I mean, that's one of the favorite stories. And if you don't understand it as a Mark and sandwiches 1 story, it's very hard to get to what Mark was trying to say. Yeah.
Is that a literary style of the day? Like, did people do that, or is Mark doing something unique here? People are coming back. That's an interesting question for you on the live stream. If you want to put it in the chat, do go for it. We're all learning together. Welcome back, folks.
Absolutely. Welcome back, everyone. So I didn't ask you to sort it out in groups, but if we can just call out what are the type of things that we see Jesus doing over and over again in Mark's gospel?
Helping people.
Helping people, particularly healing people, yeah?
Teaching.
Teaching, healing, teaching, right? Traveling, yeah.
Prophesying.
Prophesying.
Making relationships.
Building relationships,
Open people's eyes to see what was happening around them.
helping people to see, yeah,
Making it easy for them to remember.
teaching,
Praying.
praying, yeah,
Meeting people where they are.
meeting them where they are, right?
Calling disciples and then equipping them for what was to come and for the mission after his death.
Okay, so calling them and equipping them, teaching, right?
He challenges authority, especially unjust authority.
Absolutely, lots of challenging of authority, yeah.
He accepted everybody no matter what their status in life was.
Yeah, he's got this massive thing of including, and almost the biggest inclusion project of all is that everything is almost doubled from happening in the Jewish region, and the same sort of thing is happening in the Gentile region. There's almost this project of taking God to the Gentiles as well. Yeah. Anything else?
He went knowingly into dangerous situations.
Yeah. Knowingly faced danger bravely.
He doesn't leave the poor out.
I didn't hear that.
He doesn't leave the poor out.
No, he doesn't. He's deliberately inclusive of people. There's no one who's on the outside as far as Jesus is concerned, except for those who choose to be. Yeah.
He showed people what God's rule, God's kingdom's like.
Right. Showing people what God is like. Yeah.
He fed the 5,000.
He fed people. He was crazy about feeding people, wasn't he? If he wasn't eating with people, it sounds like he was feeding people. He fed 5,000. Another occasion, he apparently fed 4,000. So that's 9,000 in 2 meals. I mean, that's quite something, isn't it? And some accounts say that was only the men.
Yeah.
He's a mentor for the disciples.
Yeah.
He forgave people.
Oh, you got a great list. I mean, those were some that I thought of. Certainly, there's the whole thing of opposing evil and not just speaking to injustice, but all of the exorcisms of stories of opposing what is evil in the world. And then there are these stories of bringing peace, whether it's in the storm on the lake, and he brings peace to the disciples. They say, amazing, we've got peace in this place. But he doesn't even just bring peace to them in the storms. He actually brings peace to the storm. Yeah? Feeding, teaching, praying, healing. So, I mean, it's been quite a story. And as we've journeyed, we've noticed a whole lot of other things, how Jesus is this man of action, and everything is urgent, quickly, immediately, the whole time. We've noticed that the story is kind of split into 2 parts, that something happens around chapter 8-ish, sort of. And whereas the first half is high-paced and quick-moving, it's probably about 3 years. The second half is also quite high-paced and quick-moving, but it's probably only about 3 weeks, excuse me. Second half seems to be about what is the cost of discipleship. The first half seems to be what is discipleship.
Okay.
The story of a man of energy and power. It's a story of disciples who are following at a distance, sometimes a little bit clueless, sometimes completely clueless, just don't understand, don't get it. Yeah. The story of opposition. Jesus faces opposition from his family. Jesus faces opposition from just about every group in society. Certainly every group that holds power in society. And through it all, there's this question of just who is this? What does leadership look like? Who is this Jesus? Is he the Messiah? Is he the Son of Man? Is he the Son of God? So we've got all the way to chapter 15, verse 20. And let's read what follows. And then I'm going to ask you the same kind of questions I always ask. What do we see? What do we notice? What sounds unusual? What sounds strange? What does it sound like Mark is saying? What does it sound like Mark wants us to particularly notice? We're going to read from verse 20 to verse 47, and then we'll talk it through. So this follows obviously straight after the trial that we looked at last week. Then they led Jesus out to crucify him. They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him, they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, you who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, he saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe. And those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? And when some of the bystanders heard it, they said, listen, he's calling for Elijah. And someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink, saying, wait, let's see whether Elijah will come to take him down. And Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. Now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly, this was God's Son. There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them there were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James the younger and of Joseph, and Salome. They used to follow him and provide for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem. And when evening had come, and since it was the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a respected member of the council, who was also himself waiting expectantly for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate wondered if he were already dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him whether he had been dead for some time. When he learned that he was dead, he granted the body to Joseph. Then Joseph bought a linen cloth, taking down the body, bundled it in the linen cloth, and laid it in the tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. He rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where the body was laid. That's quite a long passage. It's quite good to hear it in one piece, but it's actually quite a lot to deal with if you ask questions. So I'm going to say, let's just, as we think about it, let's just try and move through it sort of vaguely from beginning to end, sort of from the start to the finish. What do you see? What do you notice?
I heard for the first time he was dead. The word dead came 3 times in quick succession. I'm sure that's not a mistake on Mark's part to really get this home to us. He was dead.
Hadn't fainted, he wasn't faking it, he was dead. Beyond a question, beyond a doubt, Jesus was dead. Yeah.
Why is it important that they divided up his clothes? What does that mean?
Jenny, those are 2 great questions. I love the questions. Because those are real gospel questions. Why is it important? It is important. It's got to be important because Mark has included it. So bang into the second question. What does it mean? Yeah. I don't have an answer for you. Sorry.
I think there's a prophecy, isn't there, in Isaiah?
I think it's very likely. So tell us where it is, Rachel.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's very likely to be linked to an Old Testament prophecy.
Have a look.
Psalm 22.
Psalm 22, read it for us, Sharon, if you've got it there.
Sorry. Coming up, folks. As fast as I can.
So Psalm 22, verse 1 says, my God, why have you forsaken me?
It's verse 18.
Yeah, verse 18.
They divide my clothes among themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots.
Yeah.
Okay. So certainly Jenny, Mark has included it to link it to the Old Testament prophet, the Old Testament prophecy, which reassures us as good Jewish folk that this isn't just a mistake that has happened. Somehow the prophets have spoken about this. This was expected. As horrific as it is, as we can't really make sense of it, somehow there has to be a sense of peace and calm in the fact that the prophets knew this was what was going to happen. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jenny?
Yes, thank you. Won't stop me chewing over it to see if I can get any more out of it.
What else? It was a very Roman thing to have the condemned person carry their own cross. That was like established procedure, like in more modern times, maybe getting someone to dig their own grave. It was a way of saying, just look how powerful we are. It's political theater in a sense, parading this defeated military foe, this person in front of everyone, sending a message to everyone else. Just watch out. Don't step out of line. This is how strong we are. But somehow, Jesus doesn't carry his cross. Simon, right.
Yeah.
Why might that be?
Perhaps physically he was incapable after what he'd been through.
Quite possible. Other reasons?
Could he have offered?
Yeah, don't know, Peter. Yeah. Think gospel.
When include us in a way in Jesus's death, that he was doing it for us, and we are involved in this. Well, we obviously are, in that he died for our sin. I was wondering if that could be tied in.
So, what do we know about Simon?
That he was the father of Alexander and Rufus.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Came from Cyrene.
Came from Cyrene. Yeah.
North Africa. Yeah. Rufus gets mentioned in Romans 16:13, but we don't know if it's the same Rufus.
No, we don't.
He's
not a local, is he?
No.
He's not one of the in crowd. He's not one of the powerful of Rome. Of Rome, I said. I meant of Jerusalem, but we could say either. He's an outsider, isn't he?
He's left his family, and if you want to follow Jesus, you have to leave your family and carry the burden. I can't remember where that is. I'm going to be quiet.
Spot on. Absolutely. I mean, actually, in some ways, he is joining Jesus on the way. And he is a type of some of the things that we've heard about discipleship all along. If you want to follow me, you got to put me ahead of family, Jesus says. Jesus says, if you want to come with me, you got to take up your cross. Come with me and
Could I
die.
ask where Cyrene is?
Someone said North Africa, which I think is the tradition. Yeah.
Right.
Which was also ruled by the Romans. So
that was also part of the Roman Empire. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you think Alexander and Rufus, I'm not sure about Rufus, but Alexander was a Greek name, wasn't it?
Right.
It was North Africa. There was a city called Alexandria as well. So yeah.
But absolutely right. So Alexander is a Greek name. Not sure about Rufus, but is
Rufus
that
Rufus is Latin.
Yeah.
Rufus is Latin. Okay. So is this a way of bringing other nations into this group of disciples and saying this extends beyond just the Jewish community? Here's someone who, as someone from Cyrene, as someone with a Greek tradition, as someone with a Latin tradition, actually being a part of this, being a type for us of what it means to follow Jesus. Yeah.
I mean, Simon was coming into Jerusalem. Perhaps he was a converted Jew.
Possible. Don't know. Mark doesn't tell us.
The family must have been known to the disciples that Mark was writing to, or he wouldn't have mentioned them by name. So they must have been well known to the church.
Certainly there is that suggestion that you know, if you say, oh, this is so-and-so's father, this is so-and-so's mother, that there must be that sort of connection. Yeah.
Could it be about the fact that the disciples had run away? They weren't carrying his cross, but an outsider was.
Absolutely. Where are the disciples at this point? Gone. Yeah.
It was the soldiers who forced
part
him.
Of this?
The soldiers forced him to carry the cross. It specifically says that, so you had no choice, really.
Yeah, no, true. Just go back to Alexander and Rufus and just notice for me, because we've had this conversation all through, that doesn't call. There's no talk of Alexander and Rufus being the son of Simon of Cyrene. It's the other way around. Hey, it's the father of. Yeah. But you're asking fantastic gospel questions. Just the right kind of things of how do we unpack this? How do we look at it? What else do you see? What else do you hear?
Is there any significance of them mentioning it was 9 o'clock in the morning? Why is that important?
Okay, your second question is better than the first one. Yeah, of course it's significant. Why? Because Mark couldn't have told us if it wasn't significant. Okay, so certainly there is something in that about it being part of the first watch, of demarcating the hours of the day. There might be more than that as well. Yeah.
Could I ask, please, about even those who were crucified with him taunted him, which differs from accounts elsewhere where one of the two actually sticks up for him. I'm interested as to why that's particularly significant and why they both taunt him in this one.
Okay, can I ask you to answer your question as well?
Well, one was taunting, even the other gospel, one was taunting anyway.
Yeah.
So that's one. Perhaps it was just a first gospel, quick summary of the situation.
What would it
went more detail into more detail, and
what would it mean?
I think they were wanting him to save them, wasn't he? They say, save
say
yourself,
that.
save me.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But,
yeah, that sounds right. They're wanting him to provide some means of escape from the situation, and for them as well.
Did Jesus refuse the wine mixed with myrrh so that he could keep his senses all the way through it and be more in control?
Jesus refused the wine mixed with myrrh, as Mark tells the story, because it's the fulfillment of an Old Testament prophecy as well. In the same way as the dividing up and the casting lots. Yeah. I'm intrigued. My eye's not falling actually on where the two. Just give me a verse number where the two taunt Jesus.
32.
32. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Of course, you've got the wagging and the taunting is in Psalm 22. Again, you know, you're referencing, you're echoing the Old Testament all the way through.
Right.
And even if one of the convicts eventually is forgiven, it doesn't mean he didn't taunt Jesus to begin with and then begin to realize, hey, we're here for our...
Okay. But Mark would have included that if Mark wanted us to...
Yeah, but he didn't include that.
So we've noticed in these verses how much of it is a reference to Old Testament passages, prophecies, right? There's verse 34, there's this cry of, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's an Old Testament reference. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see whether Elijah will come down to rescue him. Is this the moment in which God will step into history? Remember, the story started in chapter 1. And God was going to rip open the heavens and step in like Isaiah had promised. And instead of God coming with all guns blazing, it was a dove that descended from heaven at Jesus' baptism. And now, after they've done all this to Jesus, are we holding our breath again to see what is God going to do?
But for the majority of people, the fact he was now on a cross was the proof he was not from God.
Absolutely, Jim. This was the greatest shame there could be, along with the fact probably only could be made worse by him being naked and by them not burying his body. But this was the greatest possible shame you could bring on someone and then add to that onto their family and everything. So this is a huge shame. No wonder everyone's running away and wants nothing to do with him. Yeah, quite right. And actually, as bad as it seems, though, in verse 38, there's a positive side, because that curtain of the temple is torn in two. What does that mean?
Nothing between people and God.
Right. That's the Holy of Holies is no longer separated, that only the high priest can go in there, or only the priest can go in there. Actually, it opens. Does that opens God to access by people? That doesn't sound great, but you know what I'm saying. It's torn from top to bottom. That has to be an act of God. If someone else went and tore it, they'd tear it from bottom to top. Not so. And now, when the centurion who stood facing him saw the way in which he breathed his last, he said, truly, this man was God's son. Now there's all kinds of debates about whether this is a conversion moment for the centurion. Lots of people say it is. Lots of people say, no, it's not. He's just talking in terms of his Roman culture, and he's saying something which sounds like this guy was special. Eh? Words to that effect. There's something really special about him. And we've journeyed with this the whole way, in effect, because I've said to you over and over again, it's the church has always rejected the idea that Jesus was part God and part man. Eh? Church has never, ever said that. Church has always said Jesus is 100% human. And Jesus is 100% God. And so at this stage in the story, perhaps with the centurion nudging us, we have to look back on the story. And as we've journeyed this whole way, it's pretty incredible. Even on the Thursday night, there he is facing his death and his mortality. And he spends the time praying until he has enough strength to say, this is still the right path. Let's go. He spends his whole life doing good, healing. What were the things? Healing, teaching, feeding, all those kind of things, facing down injustice. That's what he pours his whole life out doing. He's not looking for his own comfort. He's not looking for what's good for me. Surely when we look at a life like that, think of the most wonderful person but multiply it by 100. You've got to say, this is no ordinary person. It doesn't mean he wasn't just a man, but it also means he wasn't just a man. Do you hear what I'm saying? If we look at him and we say, here is, well, as a church, we look at him and we say, this is what God looks like in human form. That's not to deny that it's in human form, but this is the clearest we can possibly get to understanding what God looks like, incarnated. So where are the disciples?
God.
Well, yes, almost.
The women are there.
The women are there. The good disciples are there, or the faithful disciples are there, or however you want to say it. The men are nowhere to be found. But the woman, Mary Magdalene, Mary's mother, James the younger, and Joseph and Salome, the ones that, as Mark tells us, used to follow and provide for him, the ones that cared for him when he was in Galilee, and there were many others as well. They were still there. And then Joseph of Arimathea, this respected member of the council, Mr. Big Deal himself, hey? And a religious guy. He's waiting for the kingdom of God. He goes to Pilate. He says, I want the body. And there's this whole debate about Pilate being surprised that he's dead or he's not dead, or surprised that he's dead already. And when he learns that he is dead, he says to Joseph, well, he probably says to Joseph, sure, why not? But Joseph's got a vested interest in this because he's a member of the council. And there's a very real possibility that Joseph isn't a faithful disciple of Jesus, but rather, just like we journeyed with the scribes, the Pharisees, some of them were close to the kingdom of God. Remember, the scribe was close to the kingdom of God, but wasn't following Jesus. And just possibly, Joseph is actually in that category. He wants the body off the cross, buried and out of the way before the Sabbath. So now, for once, we can just get on with things as they should be. We can put this whole thing behind us. And it's interesting. Joseph comes with a linen cloth. He takes the body down. And it doesn't actually say, the translation I've got in front of me says that he wrapped the body in the linen cloth. The Greek doesn't say he wrapped the body in the linen cloth. It says something like he bundled the body in the cloth. Okay? So imagine you got a big tarpaulin and you throw your leaves or whatever in it, you bundle it all together and you take it. That's the kind of word. It's not a word of great respect, laid out the body, wrapped it neatly. It's the word of how you might take a net and tie it up to hold something in.
Can I just ask?
Yep, sure.
Wouldn't that have made Joseph of Arimathea ritually unclean to be handling a dead body?
Well, yes, it would have. But at least he'd be able to perform what he needed to perform for the Sabbath the next day. If he gets the body out the way now, then at least we can start again on the Sabbath the next day.
Leviticus says that if handle a dead body, you're unclean for 7 days.
Can't answer you. Yeah,
it's in Leviticus because I read it this morning.
I don't deny it, Margaret. What I'm saying is, I mean, it's still a case that he's trying to get rid of it. He doesn't want it just to be displayed or whatever. He's bundling it to get rid of it, whether it's to do it now so that we get rid of it in 7 days for next Sabbath, or whether it's a case of doing it now for tomorrow. So possibly for next Sabbath. But it's a hurried burial that mirrors another burial that we heard of. Who else? Who?
Lazarus?
No. Lazarus.
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist. Eh?
And his disciples buried him.
His disciples buried him, Ian, that's right. I mean, actually, John the Baptist's disciples were quite faithful, and they took his body and laid it in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. Eh? His disciples were there. That's what discipleship looks like, people. Not like these men who've just scarpered. Yeah? What else do we see?
It did, whatever his motives might have been, it did convey to Jesus a degree of, if not honor, then at least getting away from the total shame of the nakedness and not being buried.
Yeah, fair enough. I
suppose it
don't
also
think we can have a strong feeling one way or the other about Arimathea, Joseph of Arimathea as a disciple. He's certainly not the greatest disciple, but actually perhaps there's some good in what he is doing. Yeah?
Yeah, it was customary, wasn't it, for bodies that had been crucified to be left to rot on the cross.
Yeah, that's right.
I suppose he was making sure that the disciples wouldn't take him and pretend he was still alive, back to life again, by putting him in the tomb.
Yeah, so I mean, we hear in the other Gospels, we hear definite sort of responses to that sort of thing. Quite right, yeah.
Just as he put the stone there, just as quickly as he'd wrapped up the body. He was quick to put the stone up, but the women watched.
Yet by the time of John's Gospel, Joseph is referred to as a disciple of Jesus.
Whereas here, it's not that
It's not
clear.
particularly, so, but it's just a...
So I'm going to share screen again because I don't want to get any later without getting into chapter 16. Okay? But 8 verses left. The 8 biggest verses in the gospel. Hey?
Yeah, read.
You've heard them before. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome bought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They'd been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" And when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed, for you are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. Now, the one thing that doesn't come across in the English is that that sentence just hangs in midair. It's like it finishes sort of halfway through the sentence in the Greek. It's gospel writing. Mark has told you everything that you need to know. He wasn't counting on John explaining the story, or Matthew or Luke or anyone else. There for Mark is the gospel, or the climax, or the summary, or the end point of the gospel, or something like that, of the good news of Jesus Christ. What do you see? What do you notice? Where's the detail? What's important? What's there? Stick close to the text.
He is risen.
Jesus is not there anymore. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. Yeah.
There's another aspect about the men not being there, because the women are going to the tomb and they're asking who will move the stone for us. Obviously,
Right.
they're on their own. The men weren't there.
Yeah, the men are not there. Absolutely. It's the women who are going first thing on the first day of the week, first thing in the morning. Yeah.
Go and tell.
Verse 7, eh? But go, tell his disciples and Peter. Remember that disciples all disappeared, and then Peter followed, and then Peter denied Jesus. So it was this kind of two-part falling away. So it's a two-part story that gets restored. Go, tell the disciples and tell Peter. Yes?
Yep.
They saw a young man. It doesn't say they saw an angel.
Oh, yes. Good. Great. Yeah. He would have said an angel if he meant an angel.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So who is this? What do we know about him? Don't have to imagine it.
He was a young man dressed in white. That's all we're told about him.
He was well, we're told one other thing as well. He was sitting on the right side.
Right side.
Yeah, so we're told three things about him. He's a young man, he's dressed in a white robe, and he's sitting on the right side. What does that mean?
Right side is side of power.
Right side of power, okay. Or the side where you're able of witness.
Yeah.
So it would relate to here is someone who can witness authoritatively about what's going on, could listen to this person. The disciples were always quibbling about, I want to sit at Jesus' right side. I want to sit at Jesus' right side. In fact, actually, who ended up at Jesus' right and left when the disciples had wanted to be at their right and left? Actually, it was those two people on the cross who ended up at the right and left. Yeah. Let me just think. The psalmist says, there's a reference in Mark chapter 12, verse 36, that the psalmist talks about the Messiah being, and talks about the right hand. Jesus talks about the human one and the right hand. But it ends up chapter 15 with the bandits being at the right and the left. But that's the position of authority, the position of witness, the position of true solidarity. This is the person who knows and understands who Jesus is and what Jesus is about at the right hand. What else do we know about him?
Is it white for righteous robes who's been washed clean?
Yes, say a bit more.
That's the
you got it exactly, just be more specific.
He's ready, he's been washed clean. The stains from his character are gone.
Who in Revelation washes their garments in the blood of the Lamb and they come out bright white?
They're the ones that come out of great tribulation, aren't they?
Specifically the martyrs.
Martyrs, right.
Specifically those who have died for their faith, those who've been willing to follow Jesus to the cross, who have been willing to lay down their lives, and laying down their lives, they find they haven't lost them, they've gained them. So this is a good disciple, a trustworthy person, someone you and I can really listen, should really listen to, and can really believe. What does he tell us?
He does say, don't be scared like a lot of the angels do through the Bible. So
Don't be alarmed. They were alarmed, and he said, don't be alarmed. Right? What else?
He has been raised.
Yeah. John, he has been raised. He is not here.
Not here.
Right? The women are a little bit worried about what exactly that means. The disciples had been worried about what does that mean? And we look at the story, and I mean, are you with me? I'm looking at it and I'm saying, what exactly does that mean? For one thing, he is not here. He's no longer in this tomb. He's somewhere else.
It could mean he's no longer on earth. He has been raised up to heaven.
Well, we actually told where he is, aren't we?
Well, then he says he's going into Galilee.
He's in Galilee.
Before you went to Galilee.
So look, this is the place he laid him. Verse 7, go tell his disciples and Peter that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. And there you will see him. Just like he said. Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee, and there you will see him, just as he told you. Where is Galilee in this story? Can't hear you, John.
North of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
several tens of miles north of Jerusalem, actually.
Yeah, it's a long way away. It's north of Jerusalem. Where is it in Mark's Gospel?
The beginning, the middle, and the end.
Yes.
The beginning and perhaps the middle, not the end. The end's in Jerusalem. This is where the story started. This is where the disciples first met Jesus. This is where they followed Jesus around in the first 8 chapters, all through Galilee. Some of the time amazed at what he did, some of the time terrified by what he did, some of the time thinking he's the greatest guy alive, some of the time following at a distance because they didn't really get him. But through it all, that's where they met Jesus. That's where they came to know him originally. That's also home. And so these disciples are being told, you go back home. Go back to your ordinary life. Go back to where this all started. Go back there. And in the midst of all of that, you will see him. In the midst of all of that, you will find him there. When you're healing, and when you're feeding, and when you're teaching, and when you're doing these Jesus kind of things in your community, what are the words? You will see him, just as he said you would. And it's an encouragement for us to say, along with his disciples, this is not the end of the story. This is the new beginning of the story. This is the chance to start it all over again. And for me to go and find Jesus in my world and in my community. And so they went out and they actually couldn't get their mind around it. They were terrified. They were amazed. And if Mark is to be believed, they said nothing to anyone. Okay. And there certainly is a picture of them really struggling and grasping with what does resurrection mean? What does it mean to go back to Jerusalem? How is this possible? This isn't the way we expected. This isn't what we wanted. But I know that they said something because we wouldn't know the story if they'd kept it to themselves. And they were afraid for what it meant. What's it going to mean to follow Jesus? What's it going to mean to go back to Galilee with all of this uncertainty and try to find him there?
But they do have to say something to the disciples and Peter, don't they? I mean, they do eventually have to, because they were instructed to tell Peter and the disciples that he's going ahead of them to Galilee.
No. So the story does come out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if like these women, you are sitting there terrified and amazed and afraid, the story will come out. The gospel will be told. Jesus will be seen. But what about you? Where are you in the story? What are you going to do? Because the story, as I said in the Greek, it really ends halfway through the sentence. It so obviously ends halfway through the sentence that if you look in your Bibles, there's 3 separate versions of people who said, no, we've got to finish the story. But Mark wasn't one of them. Mark wanted you to hang at the end of this sentence and say, so what about me? So where do I go with this? Am I willing to put my terror, amazement, and fear aside and go back home to go and do the Jesus kind of stuff that I might see him there, just as this witness has told me, just as Jesus has told me. And if we've struggled with this journey of discipleship the whole way, and we've journeyed through, was it Capernaum, and having our eyes open twice because we could see and we couldn't really see, and then we could hear, and then we needed to hear, and then we were following at a distance. And then at some point we thought, this is just not for us. This isn't going to work out well. May as well cash in for the, well, not for the 30 pieces of silver, just because I don't see any hope in this. Or perhaps you're one of the disciples who's journeyed all this way, and now you see Jesus is dead. Well, it was all a good idea. It all seemed to have so much promise, but Jesus is dead. Or might it be just maybe, just maybe, just possibly, just by faith, that if we go and do the Jesus kind of things, we might just notice that he's here with us. We might just see him just as he told us. Mark doesn't tell us a story of certainty. Even in that passage we read earlier, I didn't highlight it, but even in that passage earlier, there was that moment when you expected, here's the sign. Show us the sign, Jesus. Just do this thing. Show us a sign. Everyone will believe. Just do the wonder work and everyone will see a miracle. No, miracles don't produce faith. Miracles don't produce faith. Instead, we're caught in this place of uncertainty. Uncertainty, yeah. And we need to hold on to the faith. Hold on to this belief that Jesus' way is the right way. That this is the path to the kingdom of God, that even though it goes through the cross, it ends up in a story that doesn't end there. He is not here. He's gone to Galilee to start it all over again with you. Started the discussion with the what would Jesus do question. Okay? What was Jesus doing? We finish it now and we say the same kind of thing. What were the kind of things that Jesus was doing? Healing, feeding, praying, confronting evil, confronting injustice, bringing peace. We had more than that. Will you go and do those kind of things with Jesus? Or for Jesus? Or where Jesus would do it? And when you do, I want to say perhaps, but it shouldn't be perhaps. When you do, we're told, you will see him, just as he said. Can I pray for you? How hard it is to follow, to offer up our lives, to face our own mortality, to give our lives away for the lives of others, to follow you, Jesus. And yet we know that you are God. And yet we know that in you is life, and life in all its full. In you is life so good that it will never die. So help us. Help us because we don't have the strength for ourselves. Come and walk alongside us and give us the strength and give us the courage and give us the hope and give us the vision. Open our eyes and open our ears that we might see people, that we might hear them, that we might connect with them, we might know them. And in knowing them, we might see you. Thank you, God, for the call that you've put on our lives. Thank you, God, for the comfort with which you surround us. Amen. I want to thank you and I realize there might be some other people as well, but I want to thank you for making this journey with me and for your faithfulness in sticking it out and your willingness to walk with me as we try to walk with Jesus. It's been a great gift to me. I really appreciate the journey we've had together. So thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adrian. Adrian, I know there are one or two people who have announcements and want to say things too. The first is Ian Warburton.
Hello, thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm the district local preacher secretary in the Newcastle district. I just want to do a couple of thanks to those who've made it all happen anyway, whether that's through doing the admin or getting the technical side sorted. And then especially to you, Adrian, for the immense amount of work that you must have done in putting these presentations together. And then for the enthusiasm and passion with which you've presented them to us. We're, many of us, busy reading through Mark's Gospel in this year when Mark is the lectionary, and the way that you've fed us will enable us to do this so much better. So thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
You're very kind. Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
And if I can then add on, because I am the other district local preachers secretary, to add to what Ian has said. And also, dear friends, to let you know that looking towards the end of 2021, when we start moving into St. Luke's Gospel, that some of us are starting to begin to make some plans and devise some ideas for next year. It won't be anything like this, but we are hoping to do something so that we can engage with St. Luke for next year. And also to remind you that again this year we shall be holding, as the Darlington District, a Worship Academy online on the 5th of June, and when things are a bit more certain, that we'll be advertising that to you as well. So with Ian, I had thanks to Adrian, to Tricia, and for everybody else who's made this possible. Thank you.
John and James.
Yes, particularly to John and James for the technical support they've given us throughout. John with us this evening, and James, who's on holiday this week, has been with us the last few weeks. So thank you to both of those. If I can just draw your attention to one other Mark-related thing that's coming your way very soon, and that's a booklet called Mark the Great 50 Days. Some of you will be familiar with the Great 50 Days booklets. There've been 3 of them before, with a passage and a reflection each day for 50 days from Easter to Pentecost, but you can use them at any time. And this year, the book goes all the way through Mark's Gospel with, I think in the end, 18 different writers, taking originally a chapter each, but then a few extra people contributed. So every chapter is commented on through the booklet and spreading it over 50 days. And it's designed in such a way that those of us who've been looking at the gospel for many years will see something new, but that it's also accessible for those who are new or exploring faith. So our encouragement when you see these booklets is to take a copy for yourself and to take another to share with someone else. And perhaps as you read at the same time, to have conversations from time to time as to what you're noticing. If you didn't have good questions to ask before, if you've been listening for the last 12 weeks, Adrian's told us what a good question is. And we don't necessarily need the answers, but we can ask what we see. What do you notice? What is Mark saying? And what are you hearing? What's Mark saying to us as we read again? So the challenge to read Mark's Gospel again after Easter, with the help of Mark, the Great 50 Days there. So there were copies of those going out to every circuit in the Northeast. They should arrive next week. And there's a few going down to Adrian for use in the Southern and Islands region as well. If you're not in either of those 2 places, and I've sold it well, if I'm on your email distribution, drop me an email and I'll make sure you get a copy one way or another. Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia. Can I just add two things? One, John has put in the chat a link to the videos from these evenings. If you want to have a look at them again, those will be there. And then there has been talk about the Bible Month resources, and there are a whole lot of Bible Month resources, and I'm sure that Tricia will let you know, or you can contact our team and we can let you know all of that is available. The cases are specifically about Saturday the 13th of March. That is a part of the Bible Month thing, but it is hanging in the balance at the moment. If we're not going to run something on Saturday the 13th of March, certainly there will be other regions in the connection who will. So yeah, there's a whole menu of resources, all kinds of things that have been made available. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, a huge thank you, Adrian, to you. I think we'll give you a virtual round of applause for all that you've shared with us.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go safely, everybody. Thank you so much.